As the judicial lawfare rages on against President Trump, the House GOP forced a bill through committee that would limit the reach of these rogue judges by doing away with nationwide injunctions. So here with more is Clint Brown. He's the president of American Path. So Clint, it's good to see you once again. So let's dive into this, because I want to know, is this actually a bold move that the conservatives have been waiting for to rein in these activist judges, or is this just the beginning of a much bigger legal battle?
Thanks, Jill. It's just the beginning. Nothing that gets through the House that's actually going to constrain judges is likely to get through the Senate. Remember, it takes 60 votes to get anything through the Senate. We have 53 Republicans. They're not going to support, on the Democrat side, reining in these out-of-control judges. They're all for the judges. There are some things that the Trump administration could do that I hope they will do, that I'd love to tell you about. The federal rules of civil procedure, really nerdy, wonky lawyer stuff, require a bond to be put up anytime a judge issues an injunction. Courts haven't been doing this, and it could really dampen the lawfare if the Trump administration pushed for it harder.
So, Clint, let's talk about the big picture. You're a big picture guy and a little picture guy, and a guy who gets medium-sized things done as well. But you know, every so often we need to check in with all of our friends to sort of gauge where the mandate is, the implementation of this mandate in the midst of, what we were really texting about earlier today, what really is still a cold civil war in this country. So here we are, right, a few months in, and where are we?
Well, if we go all the way back to last year, before the election in 2024, we were looking at a pretty stark situation. They were trying to put the president in jail for the rest of his life and longer, if they could. Someone tried to kill him twice. Things were getting really hot going into the election. President Trump won a nationwide mandate, aptly named the show. Popular vote, all 7 swing states. That shifted the game. So now the movement has to really assess where we are. After he did that, now we've had so much winning from the Trump administration that the left is on the back foot. Last night, Senator Cory Booker spoke for something like 17, 18 hours on the Senate floor, yelling into the void because he has no power to stop anything that they actually want to do. So speaking that long for absolutely no reason, just to hear himself talk, to show his constituents that he's doing something, talking isn't doing. So that shows you where the left is right now. But the big picture here is we have to assess what threats are still out there. There's a threat that the Trump administration may not be able to complete their agenda, which Jill touched on just a minute ago with these nationwide injunctions where judges are trying to stop the Trump administration. There's, the illegal invasion of our country. The Trump administration is getting that under control. Check. There's the guys with guns, the law enforcement coming after conservatives. Kash Patel was confirmed. Pam Bondi was confirmed. That's under control for now. Check. So what are the big picture threats? The big picture threats are what happens with China? What happens with AI? And as a movement, we really need to start thinking about these things. Conservatives need to start thinking about these things. Matt, you and I were talking about this recently. China produces far more energy than we do. They produce 11,000 terawatt hours per year of energy. We produce 4,800. Everything you see is powered by 4,800 terawatt hours of energy a year. China's growing at 5 to 8%. We're growing at 1 to 3%. They're going to win the AI race. And Xi Jinping has made it clear that his goal is to have socialist AI run the world. They want to win that race. They think it's the new black gold. I think it's the new rifle. I think it determines who controls the world, who has freedom. So this is something we need to look at long term, is what kind of energy we're producing. What are we doing on AI? How are we countering China? What is AI going to look like in the United States? Are we going to have freedom or authoritarian AI? These are all the big questions we should start grappling with. And I think the Trump administration is doing that. Some of their tariff actions, some of their appointing David Sachs AI and crypto czar. There's a lot going on here that hasn't quite been explored, and there hasn't been a vision set for the movement to take action.
All right, so you're talking about China. I know that the Heritage Foundation is set to release a video on Thursday saying that the United States, we're not prepared to go to war with China and fight them because America has basically, we've abandoned the buildup of all of our tactical nuclear weapons. So do you agree with this assessment? Is this something that everybody at home watching in the audience should actually be worried about right now?
Oh, absolutely. I agree with that assessment. And yes, the audience should be worried about this. We should be thinking about it. We're pushing back on the leftists, the communists here in the United States, but there's a communist entity that is a global superpower at this point, trying to enact a communist agenda around the world. Okay. We should always be worried about that. But as far as like actually being able to counter them, they control the manufacturing. They have what could be the world's biggest economy. They want to be what's known as a regional hegemon. They want to control Southeast Asia, which is certainly the world's biggest economic region. That's where everything is made. They want to control Taiwan, where the chips are made. This goes back to the AI race. This is where NVIDIA produces their chips. These are the fastest chips that allow us to have AI. We may not like the idea of AI. We may not be comfortable with it, but it's coming. And I'd much rather have the United States control it than China.
Yeah, so let's talk more about that because it's enormously important, and it seems like to me that everyone's talking about AI, but most people aren't really saying much. So I have to admit, I don't know about you, but a lot of times when people start talking about AI, I stop listening because I usually hear a bunch of blah, 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 blah. But nonetheless, we know that's because people know that this is such an important issue. So if we're looking at winning that race, what does this positive vision of the future look like for America? Obviously, we need to win the energy race, but how do we do that? And how do you kind of break down? This is the beginning of the 5-point plan to win.
Well, the beginning of the 5-point plan, that's a great question, Matt. First, we have to deregulate everything that's restricting us from producing energy. We need to recognize that this is not just about lower energy costs. This is about freedom and who controls the world. And nuclear, geothermal, natural gas, coal, oil, we need all of it. We need it yesterday. We need to move fast. By 2027, we're going to run out of energy to develop AI. What that actually means in practice is that data centers will be consuming a lot of energy, and it'll be a competition between you and me who want to heat our homes, and the data centers. And they have more money than you do. They have more money than I do, than any of us. So they can afford to buy more energy. Energy prices will go through the roof. The Trump administration has a united front on this. I've heard every single person in the Trump administration who is involved with energy talk about the importance of solving this problem. So that's step one. We produce more energy. Step two, we have to fund AI development. We have the best innovation in the world. China steals our innovation. Step 2.5, we got to crack down on China stealing our innovation. We need serious law enforcement on that. I think Kash Patel and the FBI have already shown that they're willing to move in that direction. They are moving in that direction. But weaving back in Trump style to point two, we have to produce the world's best AI. We have to use innovation. We need venture capital doing it. We need the Department of Defense partnering with venture capitalists to discover who's out there, who's producing something that is going to be of value to the United States in the military front and defense tech and for consumer use. I use Grok all day, every day. And I think that's only going to continue. So I hope you guys do too.
Yeah, no, I think everybody does. As soon as you start getting into it and you're like, wait a minute, it produces so much better results than Google does. But I want to go back to one of the things that you're talking about with the energy consumption. And you say by 2027, we're going to be out of energy, right? Like we're going to be all fighting for this group of energy because all the data centers are going to be using it all up. But this is why we saw so many headlines last year, Clint, of the Amazons, the Microsofts, the Googles, the Oracles of the world going through and saying, oh, you know what? We're going to have our energy powered by nuclear energy, which is something that, on a grand scale for the nation, we might want to start looking at, but it takes so much time to get these nuclear power plants back up and running. So how do we have this stopgap in between the data centers taking over, right? With all of the companies, they're going to have it because they've already purchased their private energy, versus just us everyday Americans that are going to be out there going, hey, I do still want to use Grok. I still want to know what's going on here in the world. I need to use my devices and everything, to heat and power my home.
Yeah, it's a great question. There are these small modular nuclear reactors that are being developed. Some of them are much more further along than others. These are, the size of a briefcase, the size of a truck, that can power a data center. And an interesting thing, this is just in the weeds. It shows you what the Biden administration was up to and what the Trump administration is tangling with. The Biden administration allocated this very important type of uranium for these small reactors to companies based on their DEI qualifications. How many Black, lesbian, veteran, handicapped people do you employ? Rather than who can build a nuclear reactor and who has one that's closer to production. So that is an obstacle, and that's something that the Trump administration, one of the things added to their 1,000-page list that they have to solve in order to win this race, undo that allocation and give it to the people who can actually produce it. This competition between energy and, with AI and China, actually it's uniting a lot of factions. We're seeing this. Everybody's sort of scratching their head at Doge and this union of Silicon Valley and Republicans. When you see this big picture, it all comes together, right? Silicon Valley wants to win the AI race. For a long time, Silicon Valley had nothing to do with the Department of Defense. They had nothing to do with the US government. Most big Silicon Valley venture capital firms don't have even an office in DC. That's starting to change. You see Elon Musk coming in. Obviously, we all know what's happening there. Like I said, David Sachs in the White House is the AI and crypto czar. There's this merger happening. What it really is a counter elite that is stepping up to save the country from the current elites. The Ivy League professors, the district judges, the NGO heads, the Democrat politicians, the media stars on mainstream media. These people form an elite. This merger between Silicon Valley and Trump world is a counter elite. And it gets really interesting when you start thinking about the implications of that, which is that is a necessary but not sufficient condition for civil war. Matt, you mentioned the cold civil war that we're in. Well, often what happens in a civil war is the elite will use non-elites to attack the counter-elite. Where have we seen this happen? People are attacking Teslas left and right. They're firebombing them. They're firebombing Tesla dealerships. They're breaking windows. They're keying them. They're drawing swastikas on them. Maybe you're the Nazi if you're drawing a swastika. This is all happening, and it's all organized. We know this is organized. I think the Blaze crew, not the Blaze crew, the War Room crew, who I know we're all friends with, released something today showing Rep. Jayapal organizing, nonviolent counter protests and teaching people how to be resistant. And your risk tolerance for the resistance can go up depending on how bad the situation is. Maybe you're willing to engage in more risky activities. These are things that she was saying. This elite, this former elite, is trying to stamp out the counter elite. Now, we don't have the same motivation that they had in 2020. They seem a little bit defeated, but they're not going away. And it all centers around, are we going to be the country with the most energy? Are we going to be the country that wins the AI race? One side is for that. One side is against that. China is also against us winning that race. There's something very interesting is happening here, and not a lot of people are seeing all the pieces put together.
Yeah, that is one of the most important stories. It definitely needs some more light to be shown on it.